Okay, today we are talking about how to maintain a good relationship with God. This is so vital if you want to have a happy, fulfilling life. So check it out. How is it we can do some amazing and sometimes unexplainable things, like heal our own bodies by the power of our thoughts? Mother's intuition, the law of attraction. Can we really tap into our subconscious mind? Can we really create our own realities? It begs the question, are we novice gods? Okay, so today we're talking about how to maintain a good relationship with God. Now, I came and I brought you here to, this is the saddest neighborhood in our whole valley. This is a really sad place because they've started to build some homes here and then they didn't finish. They didn't complete the project, and so there's a bunch of half-finished, just framework houses here that nobody's living in. There's no life in them. And the reason that I wanted to bring you here, because that's kind of what happens or can happen to us if we lose our relationship with God. Now, I tell you this from experience because I had so many years when I was so frustrated if you caught that, because my relationship with God was very tenuous. I believed at that time that, you know, he was kind of like a lawyer. And for some reason I always envisioned him with a clipboard in his hand, and he was always making notes, figuring out where I'd screwed up, you know, and Scott, you missed one there. And I always felt like he was paying attention to all of my mistakes, all of my weaknesses, and I was embarrassed, and I was angry, and I was bitter at him, and I didn't have good communication lines with him, which really didn't help. And with all of these things, I just became more and more frustrated with my life. Now, I share these things because I know this happens to other people. I was just on the phone last night with a dear friend of mine who lost his identity. He lost his faith and his belief in God. And I've seen kind of what's happened to him and his life and his family and kind of where things have gone. And it's not the best, you know, but I understand that, and I look back at my life and I think, oh my goodness, I am so grateful that during these dark times I didn't lose everything. And that's a big reason why I'm doing this show, is because I've learned some things that I'd like to share with other people so that you can keep your relationship with God, so that you can be happy and fulfilled. So anyway, it started out with my belief that God was this guy with a clipboard and he was always paying attention to my mistakes, and I just had a terrible time getting over this until I changed my belief about him, my perceptions about him, until I started to accept that, well, what if God is a loving father? Well, if he's a loving father, he's not going to have the Scott Wilhite clause in there that says, yeah, I'm going to bless everybody, well, except for Scott. And so anything he does, even though he does it well or something, I'm not going to, you know, he doesn't get credit for it or whatever I believed at that time. But anyway, as you change your belief so that you can believe that God is a loving father, and then you just kind of play the what if game. Well, what if that's true? And then you add a few more things into your life that, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not explaining that very well. Once you start out with that as kind of a foundational belief. So, you know, if we look here at this house that is unfinished, it has this bottom layer of cement. That is the foundation, and if it's grounded well, then you're going to be okay. This particular house is in kind of a floodplain area, and it let a lot of water in. And so when you have water and icky stuff coming into your foundation, it wrecks everything. And that's, I think, why this house never was finished and why they're having problems here. But that's what can happen in your own life. I don't want you to have a half-finished life. I don't want it to be just boards, but I want you to have a fully fulfilling life, and that's really by understanding who God is, what your relationship with him is, and then when you understand that in a beautiful way, it just opens up so many possibilities. So again, in this documentary series, we're kind of playing with the idea that what if God exists? What if we are his children? Does that mean we carry his DNA? And if he is our Father, does that mean that we have the capabilities within us? Can I share with you a secret for how to maintain a great relationship with God? Again, I started out with such frustrating feelings about my relationship with God and who I thought He was and how I thought He was just paying attention to everything I was doing wrong and that He wanted to punish me. And even though I did something right, there was some like legal clause that was going to make it so I couldn't obtain the blessings that I wanted. Those were really bad belief systems that didn't serve me well. Well, I paid attention to a guy named Henry Eyring. He told a system that you can do, and if you do this every night, it will help you recognize the patterns in your life. Really, everything is a pattern, and when you start to recognize these repeated patterns, it really changes your perspective and allows you to have a new belief system that will serve you well, that will be constructive. He said, commit to yourself that before you go to bed each night, you will take time to reflect and to ponder and to think back on how you might have seen the hand of God in your life. A lot of times this comes by a crazy coincidence, some fortunate accident that happens. And as you think about that, write it down in a journal. I just kept a little journal like this, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a sec. But write it down, and it just has to be like a sentence, maybe two, where you write down how you've seen the hand of God in your life, and date it. But commit to yourself to do that every single night. And as you start to do that, you'll start to recognize these patterns, these repeated patterns where all of these crazy coincidences happen in your life. What I have found is that God is actively involved in our lives. And we can see His hand. Actually, we can't maybe see His hand so much as we can see the fingerprints that are left behind from these amazing coincidences that happen in our lives. But if you want to maintain a great relationship with God, start to pay attention to what He's doing for you. So I keep this journal. I'll just flip real quick because I don't want to actually show you what's in there. But each day I would write down a sentence or two. And this is what changed my life the most. I read scriptures all the time. And scriptures are great. But you know what scriptures do? They tell you about God's dealings with prophets and important people. This shows to me about God's dealings with me. This is what has changed me the most. And if I had a fire at my house and I only had a few seconds to save my family and maybe one or two other possessions, I think I would grab these, because this has become so precious to me that as I look back, I recognize His hand in my life, and it has changed who I believe I am, and has changed my relationship with Him to where I feel like we're more a partnership, and that life happens for me and not to me. And so even the challenges that I face, I believe that God has put them there for a purpose. So anyway, just simple things like this can help you change your relationship with God so that you have a strong, happy, connected relationship. And when you get that kind of clarity, it's amazing what can happen in your life. Hey friends, want to get rid of stress, anxiety, and worry? Ready to use some of your inner creation powers? Visit scottwilhite.com and join me for a web class. If you do it soon, I'll give you a free planner.